Hello, everybody. It's a day of yo-yo tensions and terrors one more time. Markets are all over the place because one guy opens his mouth and a whole bunch of hot air comes out. We're going to talk about that. But really, we're going to talk about Bitcoin and treasuries that are stacking and what's happening around the planet. Some very interesting stuff, as well as BitBonds. Never before has there been such a perfect solution to solve a whole host of ailments. We'll get into it. Big shout out to our moderators, Sean D and T&D and KA and everybody else. Thank you all for coming. Let's talk about the story. And load up the slide. Here we are. This is called Treasuries on Fire. And thank you to Psych Experience. Join Patreon. Yeah, it's fun on the inside. Anyway, let's talk about some charts first. Normally I do news first, but today I'm shaking it up a little bit because why not? First of all, this isn't a chart, but it's the reason the markets are falling right now is because Jerome Powell is filling the room with hot air. He says, well, I don't really know what's going on. I don't know the impact of the tariffs. We should wait and see. I don't know the impact of layoffs in the government on job market. We should wait and see. I don't know what's going to happen. We should wait and see. I think tariffs are going to hurt the car industry in the United States. That's true, with the exception of Tesla. Yeah. It's like 420 PhDs, and they don't know what's going on. But the problem is the traditional markets will listen. And they basically says nothing. And they get alarmed because he's not clear. Anyway, it's a crazy world we live in. And we like that because if everybody knew what was going on, it'd be much harder to make money. So anyway, let's get back to the story and talk more about Bitcoin stuff. First of all, Bitcoin investors are indecisive. This is from the head of research at Coinbase. And this chart basically talks about how Bitcoin investors are on the fence. This is their, what do they call this chart? Risk-adjusted performance versus 365-day rolling windows. So look at the price of Bitcoin and against the price of Bitcoin a year ago and the deviation from the mean and what's going on. And that is the Z-score in blue and then the Bitcoin price in gray. So at the market right now, how do you interpret this? Well, it shows you that the macro challenges are disrupting the crypto market big time. I always say, keep your head out the window. And this structural pressure is all about uncertainties, about the macro, about recession, about tariffs, and traditional risk. Traditional risk assets are also under strain from fiscal tightening and concerns, even from people like Jerome Powell. But this is the kicker, all right? If you look at this chart, look at the blue line. What does it tell you? Well, you could construe that this is in the value zone. Obviously, it does go deeper, 2 standard deviations away from the mean, but that typically happens at the bottom of bear markets like November 2022. And then it goes up. I don't believe we're in a bear market, and neither does the head of research for Coinbase, because they believe over the next 4 weeks, things will kick off. And the second half of 2025 is going to be very, very good. I can't remember the exact words, but sentiment resets and it will happen very rapidly. And they remain extremely optimistic for the second half of 2025, which begins in 2.5 months. A lot of stuff is coming June and summertime. It could be a great summer. So don't be on the beach. Be at your computers watching what's going on. So that is indecisiveness. And remember what happens in a couple of weeks, 2 to 4 weeks. We have Bitcoin is not following money supply yet because of that 10.8 week lag, which is about to kick off. And Bitcoin price will follow soon. And I'm 80 to 90% sure of that, ladies and gentlemen. Just be patient. Ignore the FUD. Thank you, Psych Experience. You rock. So all goodness there. The yellow, by the way, is global M2 money supply. And it's overlaid with a time delay of 108 days against Bitcoin price. So it's only a matter of time before things kick off. But even more interesting than this is, guess what? Is the size of the growth of global M2. Let me turn off my picture, or I can stick myself in the bottom corner. The global M2 growth outpaces the Bitcoin market cap by over 3 times Bitcoin market cap. That's how much new liquidity is on the planet since the beginning of the year. And it's only a matter of time before a tiny little piece of that trickles in. It doesn't need to be a lot. 0.5% will have a huge impact on Bitcoin price. And again, per this chart, it's coming and the impact is there. But then again, if everybody says it's coming and it's going to happen, sometimes it doesn't, but I'm 80 to 90% sure it will. So watch this space carefully. But a stunning development. Again, the global M2 so far in 2025 growth is 3 times larger than the entire Bitcoin market cap. Glorious. Half Viking, thanks for joining. Also, another very positive sign out there. Bitcoin bullish momentum is picking up again. We're seeing signs. We saw signs of the bottom. Now we're seeing signs of the turnaround. Remember, bottoms happen first. You saw me talking about seller exhaustion for quite some time over the last couple of weeks. Now we're seeing the momentum swing. Let me explain why with a couple of charts, so you don't think all of this comes from my little brain. Bitcoin bulls are coming back, and this is the Bitcoin bullish momentum, and it's picking up again. This current ratio, what you're looking at here, is the number of buyers to sellers. When the ratio is higher than 1, that means there are more buyers than sellers, and this is the crudest and very bullish sentiment indicator. It dominates volumes, and remember as well, a ratio below 1 indicates that sellers outnumber buyers, and that's the red stuff. We're coming out of the red zone, going into the green zone. Very important. Big sell-offs happen, and you can overlay this with the tariff tensions, the double bottom there on the red, where people just go risk off. It's nothing to do with Bitcoin. Bitcoin hasn't changed at all. It's just the sentiment. The emotions take control of what people do, and they press the sell button because they're afraid, when really you should be pressing the buy button when everybody else is afraid. And that's the simple rule of investing. So let's continue with the story. Let's see what else we got. Now, Bitcoin treasuries. Okay. Bitcoin in companies. Bitcoin companies stacking Bitcoin have grown their treasuries 16% so far in 2025, according to Bitwise. Bitwise had this really cool chart, and it breaks down all of the different players. There are now 75 Bitcoin treasury companies. They've added large amounts of Bitcoin so far this year. As I said last year, treasuries would be the name of the game. It's not retail investors, it's treasury companies stacking Bitcoin. And we saw some big moves as well, very dramatic moves in some of the stackers. We have companies that I can turn myself off because I gotta zoom into this a little bit so I can see the actual numbers. You got Marathon now hold 47,531 Bitcoin. They just eclipsed 47,000 a week or so ago, 10 days, and now they just keep on stacking. And their mining results, I'm working on those right now, are actually quite productive too. RIOT is now over 19,000 Bitcoin. CleanSpark, 11,869. A couple of weeks ago was under 11,000. So they've added another over 1,000 Bitcoin just in a couple of weeks. And then, of course, MicroStrategy, 528,185 Bitcoin. Monster bag. And of course, a whole bunch of others in there. And the NAV premiums are very different depending on the different companies. The minor NAV premiums sometimes are a little bit low, with the exception of HUT. Marathon, they're very low. RIOT, pretty low, 1.37. Marathon, 1.06. And MicroStrategy, the beast that everybody wants a hold of, 1.86. Nobody is stacking like MicroStrategy. And yeah, it ain't a sprint. It's a marathon. Exactly. So bide your time, be patient, conserve your fuel, don't burn yourself out. Lots of good stuff happening. And in other news too, this guy called Bo Hines was on, I think Anthony Pompliano flew to DC to meet with Bo Hines. And they spoke about how everything is on the table. This guy, Bo Hines, who is kind of steering the strategic Bitcoin reserve, and the US wants to get as much Bitcoin as they possibly can. And they're looking at all alternatives that do not impact taxpayer dollars, and they will leave no stone unturned. But they believe part of tariff revenue could be part of the way in which they buy and build a Bitcoin bag. And this was, again, yesterday, I think. So it's interesting. Let's get into the Bitcoin news because a lot of the Treasury stuff ties into what we're talking about here in a big way. First of all, I mentioned bottom signals were there a couple of weeks ago. Now we're seeing the tide turn. The ETFs, for the first time since the very beginning of the month, have turned positive in a big way. 76.4 million. Not big, but that's how it works. It's like a big roller coaster. Sell off and then accumulate. And then a few months later, sell off and then accumulate. Again, everything happens in cycles. Oversold to the downside, overbought to the upside, and that's where we are. Thank you, Jules, for coming. Now, this is a cool little story. I'll turn my camera off again so you can see this. This is the 10-year BitBonds, and this is from Bitwise. And I'm going to spend a couple of minutes talking about this because it's very rare you see, they call it a coincidence of needs, but different players need the exact same thing, and Bitcoin has the answer. That's U.S. government. Okay, U.S. government needs to finance $14 trillion, kind of bonkers. Also, interest rates are relatively high. They need to come down. And, on the bond side, they need protection from dollar inflation and demand protection from asset inflation and want a little bit of upside, a tiny bit above the risk-free rate, which is the Treasury bond return. But governments here benefit by diversifying their funding sources and reducing borrowing costs with these BitBonds. And this is what many players have spoken about in the government, people like Lutnick, people like Saylor, and now Bitwise. Vanek, sorry. Getting Vanek and Bitwise confused. Apologies for that. Both great firms, by the way, are looking at pushing this narrative too. So here the investors gain a product that hedges against inflation. It's hard, it's scarce, and everybody's stacking it. Others, it also offers growth potential and maintains safety, meeting both conservative and speculative needs. And the broader market, the bond market, it bridges kind of traditional finance and crypto and attracting new participants. We see that with MicroStrategy and all of their different financial jujitsu offerings as well. And in summary, BitBonds are framed as a win-win against addressing the financial challenges and desires of governments and investors alike, while tapping into the growing interest in this puppy called Bitcoin. So I hope they float them. I hope they launch them in some way or another. But this is one of the things as well that this guy, Bo Hines, is talking about too. So we'll see. Also, it's kind of interesting. Not sure if I agree with it, but the former PayPal CEO says Bitcoin will leapfrog all networks for money in 2025. Well, we're getting close to being halfway through 2025, and we're nowhere near that. But he also says if you're a developer, you won't even consider building on something else. Now, the reason I go a little bit against that is because there are limitations in what you can build on Bitcoin, but Bitcoin needs a whole bunch of solutions. It needs a better Lightning, it needs a really good layer 2, etc. Where they come from, I don't know, but it might take a different blockchain to pull it. One of the advantages of the store of value technology that is Bitcoin is its security and the fact that it moves slow. It doesn't move fast. The faster you move, the more you break things. You don't want stuff to break on Bitcoin. So from this perspective, I don't know if I agree, but sharing the news anyway. And welcome to Switzerland. This is so cool. Proton Wallet have developed a really cool, they have the most secure email apparently. And now they've built a Bitcoin wallet. And now at any Swiss train station, of which there are thousands of them, they have trains everywhere in Switzerland, you can buy a Bitcoin with cash and make it secure on Proton Wallet. So again, more adoption, more penetration. And Switzerland has always been a very forward-looking country. So shout out to the Swiss for making this happen. Now, in other crazy news, because this is going to be, I did warn you, a little bit of a trip around the globe with all the crazy Bitcoin news happening across different countries. But that was Switzerland. Now, Russia. Again, Russian economists believe that the ruble is stable when it probably shouldn't be, because somehow the Russians are trading, they're bypassing, what do you call those things? Restrictions on trade. I forget the word, it'll come to me in a second. But, oh, that's going to bug me now. It'll come to me. But apparently Russia is using crypto for foreign trade settlements, which reduces the reliance on hard currencies like the dollar. They were pulled out of the SWIFT system, etc., and now they've gotten creative, and they are potentially, we don't know exactly how much, but they're potentially using crypto for a lot of Russian trade, which is keeping the ruble stable. We'll see. And Russian firms are bypassing the system, again, lowering the demand for the dollar, which also is kind of indirectly keeps the ruble stable, which is good for the Russians, perhaps. And apparently they're trading with other BRICS countries using crypto. Again, using crypto can stabilize fiat currencies and reduce downward pressure on their exchange rate. Again, we don't know how much of this is actually happening, but there's probably a lot more happening than we realize. And this will be important. It'll be important for nation states to not only mine Bitcoin, to have Bitcoin in a strategic reserve, but also use it for trade when possible. And if you have something precious like natural gas or oil or who knows what, ASICs miners, why not sell them for big sanctions? That's the word I'm looking for. Thank you so much. Sometimes on live TV, I get what's called a technical medical term, a brain fart. So apologies for that, live TV. Thank you, sanctions. And the second Swedish member of parliament now is urging the country to consider a strategic Bitcoin reserve. This guy, I'm probably going to butcher his last name, Dennis Diukarev. Doesn't sound like a Swedish name, but they submitted a memo to the Swedish Minister of Finance, I think it's Elizabeth Svahn, regarding implementing a Bitcoin strategic reserve, not only for the country, but also for the central bank. So Sweden all of a sudden has two people going after SPRs in a very short window of time. I think we covered one a week ago. Brain fart coin. Yeah, new coin. And speaking of a good trip around the world, because that's the theme today, China is debating what to do with their Bitcoin crypto bags. They have a lot of crypto that they've confiscated over the years, and they are thinking very carefully about what they do, how they regulate it. Should they dispose of their growing stash of seized cryptocurrencies or create a crypto strategic reserve like what the US wants to do? Sometimes the Chinese will do opposite of what the US does. Either way, they have 194,000 Bitcoin. Again, topic is treasuries. UK has 61,000, probably confiscated as well. 46,000 in Ukraine. Bhutan, 13,000 and growing because they're mining a ton. El Salvador, over 6,000. And Finland, over 2,000. Maybe the Swedish are looking at the Finnish saying, I want some of that too. Anyway, the point is, nation states, just like corporate treasuries, will continue, I believe, to stack Bitcoin in the future. And they'll be the big ones that will make this asset even harder. We'll see what they do with in China. Will they just say, I'm going to dump all this stuff and shore up my digital yuan, CBDC, or do something else? We don't know. We shall see. Either way, the market's big enough to digest 200,000. And then this one might cause a bit of consternation, but there's a magazine called Protos. They kind of go deep on certain articles. And they said there was a Chinese chip that's used in certain Bitcoin wallets. There's three of them. One is called Bowser. The other one is called, I can't remember the other one. And then Blockstream Jade, which apparently is used by some people, but they say it can be a brute force hacked because of vulnerability in the code. Now, it's more complex. I made a detailed post on this on Patreon. I'm not going to get into it here, but the team at Blockstream Jade say it's not affected by the ESP32, Bluetooth CVE. CVE refers to debug interface, etc. You kind of have to be a wallet software developer to figure all this out. But the point is, as far as I am concerned, I always say this: it takes a lifetime to make it and a second to lose it. This is kind of the meme of the day, but it's a serious rule, okay? Risk management rule. If ever there's a little bit of smoke or a little bit of concern, it's just not worth it, okay? And again, never store all your eggs in one basket. Have multiple wallets, multiple types, cold storage, maybe different versions of Bitcoin too, maybe a little ETF, maybe a little MicroStrategy. Spread it all around. Don't have everything in one place where it can be taken from you. Again, a second to lose it. I've been saying this for years, and this is so, so important, everybody. So ending on that little intense note, very important. Risks and rules are important. Hope you like the video. Hit the like and subscribe if you do. That was the Bitcoin Daily. Thank you, Slider and Sean D and everybody out there. Chef is there as well. Deutschland. Thanks all. Have a good night. See you tomorrow. Bye-bye.